What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Bojinjin vlog. How you guys doing? Welcome back to my humble abode. Bit of a change of scenery, I guess. I've been really enjoying making entries in my car recently, but yeah, just thought that I would change things up a bit. But anyway, in today's entry, I have a bit of a juicy one for you, as hopefully you have come to expect. But yeah, you might be asking yourself, if you're watching this right now, like, what the heck? Right? Like, what the fuck, Mo? And rightly so, because if anything is kind of, I guess, clear. Well, I don't know if it's clear, but like, if anything, well, at least personally to me, if anything that is becoming clear to me is that, like, there's kind of a particular kind of sentiment, I guess you could say, that's kind of coming out in my videos, and and it's generally becoming, like, kind of clearer to me as time goes on, which is that, like, I talk about love a lot on this channel, and I've mentioned in the past that love, doing what you love, and building a life that you love, is really something of a a very important message I have on this channel, or rather that, like, I try to, in my own life, but also hopefully, like, in the transmission of these videos on this vlog channel, I try to kind of, like, approach everything from the angle of, like, spreading a message that empowers, hopefully whoever's watching this to kind of keep going towards their dreams, it's kind of part, I guess, contrived, and also part, like, organic, how this kind of came about. I always knew personally that, even before doing this channel, that I was going to, be doing what I love, and putting that at the forefront of my life, but of course I also had the idea that, I'm going to help people do this because, they're going to think highly of me, like the whole kind of, like, the whole kind of motivational speaker type of angle, right? Yes, that's, obviously, like, there was a bit of that going in, but, like, it also kind of happened organically that, like, following your passion and following your heart and all of that stuff, championing love, that also kind of came as a byproduct of me living out my life and following my heart, right? And seeing where that took me. And it just so happens that just slowly, that has become, like, more and more the case, that, like, it's really the message I want to be spreading, right? Which brings us to the topic of this entry, right? It's like, what the fuck, right? It's like, I've been basically, like, singing the praises of, going towards what you love and following your passions and, like, owning yourself, and all of that stuff, right? All of that good stuff. So what gives? Why am I making an entry talking about how too much of that is a detriment? Well, I'm about to go into it, but, like, in recent entries I've also been talking about, vibration, right? And I have a concept that I'm fairly, and by fairly I mean very, like, very proud of, that I coined, which is the axes of perception, right? From time to time in these entries I mention that concept, because it just, not only am I proud of it personally, but also it goes a long way in explaining, some of the kind of more mysterious parts of life, right? I say mysterious, more just, like, hard to explain, and sometimes a bit random, seemingly, right? The whole kind of, like, we all, I think most people, right? Most people, like at a certain point in their lives, they realize that they need to do something with their lives, with themselves. They need to improve themselves. They they need a goal in life. Most people get to that point. And a lot of people, myself and you, watching this, we stumble on this spiritual path, which is one dimension of like the personal journey towards self-improvement, personal development, right? Bettering oneself, becoming the strongest version of oneself. There's many ways of articulating it, but this journey, this journey of the self that we all go on, that most of us stumble on. Well, I say most of us, like the people, the people who are on that journey stumble on, but and that's great. And there are many people who express the desire to keep going on that journey, but like, as you go along, like you realize that life is a and I quote, a fancy box of assorted cashews, right? Where like sometimes things happen, and like even with the best intentions seemingly, like just shit happens, I guess. Or like things might not go the way that we planned them to, despite having most of the times the best intentions, right? Because at the end of the day, like everyone's trying their best in a way of looking at it, right? Everyone's just trying to stay alive and to do the best they can for themselves and other people, right? Their family, their friends, their loved ones, society. And the reason that is, right? And the reason why I'm so proud of this idea, like, of the axes of perception that I kind of came up with is like, yeah, it's because you're sometimes like, there's a how would I explain it? There's a parallelism. I don't know if that's the right word for it. It probably isn't, but like, well, I mean, there is a parallelism in I guess you could say in terms of the axes, right? So, just to kind of quickly recap again, I've recapped this so many times in my entries, but for those, if you're watching and you don't know what I'm talking about, axes of perception, what the hell is that, Bo? The axes of perception is basically my way of viewing how certain things in life, vertically viewing things and thinking about things, are concrete, right? For example, you are currently watching a YouTube video, right? You are watching a Chinese man, right, in his mid to late 20s. Yes, I'm in my. I know. I look good for my age. Oh God, did I really say that? But I apologize for my hubris. But yeah, yeah. But like you're watching someone deliver, talking about his thoughts and his life to you. You are currently living where you live, you own things, you live in a house or an apartment or wherever you live, right? You have friends and families, right? And like, there are things that you can buy with money, right? Money is a thing, right? We all kind of need money to survive, right? We need food to eat, right? And like all of this stuff that's very, it's like, yeah, it's things. You have a life, you're a person, and you do things, and you think things, right? Yes, thoughts even are symbolic, right? So this is the symbolic axis. It is everything that can be conceptualized of. It is a nice way of tying it together abstractly, right? It's not necessarily a concrete thing. It's not like the same as saying, this is a phone, right? Or this is a bracelet, right? Or this is a top, like these are my PJs, right? It's not quite that way. Or rather like, yeah, this axis is abstract, right? But like it basically kind of ties together everything that is concrete and symbolic and can be conceptualized of, right? But then there is actually another dimension of life, which isn't so much to do with what exists, right? The vertical axis is about what exists. What exists? What is a thing? The universe is a thing, right? And science, by and large, deals with things, right? Science, business, all of that good stuff, right? But like there is another dimension of life that is not as easy to pin down, particularly with language, right? With verbal language, But it is a component that I coined the energetic component of life, right? And the energetic component of life deals with your kind of subjective experience of things that happen, or the thoughts that you think, right? It is the context, if you will, to the content of your life, right? And the way I stress that, I think, is weird, because content means happy, right? But anyway, sorry, a bit of a tangent there, but like, albeit a small one. But so yeah, right. And what this means basically is that the same thing can happen to you, right, at different times, but you can feel differently about them, AKA you can at one point in your life have something happen to you, or be, or be doing something, or kind of like have a certain like identity about you that is very disempowering. But then later on, and this is actually how shadow work works, right? For those of you who are, on the spiritual journey, you know what shadow work is. Shadow work is, known to some as spirituality 2.0, right? Which is something that Teal Swan coined, is the discovery, and furthermore the ownership of aspects of one that aren't necessarily attractive, right? Shadow work is discovering the ugly sides of oneself, and and things of that nature, right? And I say ugly, but it's really just like it's a different process, right? Because there's the attractive side of life where you aim for things, right? And even though you have to work, right, for a lot of your lot in life, right? At least eventually, right? I'm nearing 30, and like, I'm really starting to really work for myself, right? I guess you could say that I had a good upbringing, thanks to my family and everything. But like, but yeah, despite that, right? The prospect of going towards a better you, like improving yourself and earning more money and becoming more attractive or more respectable or more accomplished and all of that stuff, right? Getting like the path, like doing what you love, motherfucker, right? All of that stuff is attractive, right? And that's what we would call spirituality 101. But spirituality 2.0, right? Just recapping a lot of concepts as usual, right? Is a is like an antithetical, I guess you could say, process to spirituality 101, whereby it's not about chasing things and striving for things. It's more about like coming to accept those things that you have but you're not aware of, because they have been suppressed within you for whatever reason, right? And that's what shadow work is, right? And the journey of shadow work, right, as most of you who are more along the path know, is about taking aspects of you that you once deemed to be ugly, unattractive, right, violent, disturbing, perverse, and transforming them, not getting rid of them, not replacing them, right? Because again, like, and this is how the spirituality 2.0 process differs from the 101 process. Is like the 101 process is striving, right? You have to overcome adversity to get to what you want to get to, right? But like the two, and so like 101 is, I guess, fighting against mediocrity and stagnation and all of that stuff, right? Inertia. Yeah, but like 2.0 is dealing with you already pushing away certain parts of you, right? And as you go along the spiritual journey, you will find that you are pushing against these things. Like, you're pushing against the fact that you may be unattractive, You might be pushing against the fact that you are narcissistic, as I realized like a few entries ago. You might be pushing against the fact that like you're timid, or that you have a certain love for something that people don't approve of, right? Like whatever it might be, right? There's something that you don't want to think about. You don't want to think about it so much that you have made it subconscious, right? And like the shadow work process is like re-owning these aspects of yourself, but and transforming or transmuting them, which is, I guess, it's a bit, which I guess is kind of synonymous, or rather like, which is distinct from like trying to get rid of them, right? And I know I'm spouting a lot of words, right? But like, for those of you who are on the journey, like, you'll know what I mean energetically. You'll perceive what I'm putting down here, right? Energetically. But anyway, bit of a long intro as usual, but like, so, but as you go on with life, right, as you kind of continue to go on the spiritual journey and like doing the 101 and doing the 2.0, right, and in my words, right, my way of coining these things, or my label for these things is moving in the direction of your joy and moving in the direction of your pain, and kind of like dancing between those two things. You will nonetheless, come across stuff, right, and by stuff I mean like shit will happen, like shit will go according to plan sometimes. Sometimes they won't go according to plan, and then you can go even deeper, right? When things go to plan, right? Sometimes it's amazing, right? And you're like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I'm so glad I pursued this thing because it is absolutely everything that I could have hoped for and more, right? But then there are some times when you accomplish that thing or you achieve that goal and you realize that you were mistaken. You get there and you're like, wow, this is kind of not what I was expecting. This is honestly kind of a disappointing outcome, right? That could happen. And then, moving on to, things that you don't expect to happen, right? So sometimes that shit is shit. Right, sometimes you get thrown a curveball by life, and I apologize for the shifting light levels once again. Like, it's I think it's like 2 or 3 p.m. right now. It's British winter, right? And my camera's not that great at picking up lighting, but anyway, yeah. Sometimes it's terrible. You could be saddled with something that completely incapacitates you in your journey to self-actualization. It could stop you from achieving your dreams. You never know. You have setbacks, but sometimes shit happens that you don't expect. You completely could not have planned for, and it just creeps up on you. But it shows you something beautiful, and you're like, wow, what the fuck? What the fuck? I did not expect this, but this is fucking amazing. I would never have guessed this could have happened, and so and there are people, as I talked about in one of my old entries, that have it all. They seemingly have it all. They have the money, they have the possessions, they have the fame, they have the talent, they have the looks. Right? They have everything. They have the future, right? They have the life. And yet, deep down, they're miserable, right? And conversely speaking, there are people who seemingly have nothing. They could be homeless. They could be dirt poor and in serious debt, They could have no one by their side to help them. But there's something about them that is so rich. Because they know how to appreciate, or focus on, right, appreciating what they do have because of their experiences with poverty, right? So, what gives, right? Obviously, you can't simply look at something symbolically, right, and say that you know everything about that particular situation or that person, right? And this applies to yourself, of course, right? So there is an additional component to life, which is the energetic component, which is like the subjective experience that we, as conscious beings, sensitives, spiritual beings, we learn to tap into along the journey, right? But anyway, so okay, long ass intro aside, or really, really long, apologize, right? Why do I say in the title of this entry, why do I talk about loving too much is a problem, right? Well, it is basically for that very reason, right? I'm kind of like doing a very top-down approach today in this entry, but like, love is a word, is a concept, right? And the thing with words and concepts is they are convenient kind of placeholders for pointing towards certain things and certain meanings and certain nuances, but like they don't actually tell you what specific nuance they're referring to. So like when I say, love is too much of love is a bad thing, like I'm talking about, I guess I would be referring to like the more kind of like earthly state of love, right? Like most spiritual people kind of distinguish between two kind of primary forms of love. When we talk about love, most people are, they know that there's a what's called what I guess you would say is an ecstatic state of love, and then there is a more spiritual state of love, right? And the ecstatic state of love is when you are, and when you feel good, right? And funnily enough, like this is the one I'm referring to in my entries, right? Of course, well, it's not what I'm fully referring to, like, because again, I'm guilty of using the same word because it's just so convenient, but like, that's the ecstatic state of love when you feel good about stuff, when, you're in love with someone, when you're in love with a project, when you're in love with what you're doing right now, when you're in love with like how relaxed and peaceful you feel and how healthy you feel, right? That's the ecstatic state of love, right? Or the physical. Some people would even say conditional. I guess that would be an apt kind of way of describing this form of love. But I will say that like there's probably a bit of a stigma, or rather, there's a bit of a stigma kind of like with this whole conditional and unconditional love kind of a thing, right? But I digress. So then there's the spiritual state of love, which is basically that, like that time, like when you first discover oneness and you realize that you're part of everything and everyone, and not necessarily you physically, but like there is an aspect of you that permeates the entirety of existence, and as such is ageless, timeless, and indestructible, right? The first instant, or the first instance that you feel this, like you kind of you tap into that spiritual love, right? Spiritual love, a lot of people say, is the state of emptiness, or rather the state of kind of detaching from your form identification for a second and kind of feeling, because that's really how you tap into it, is you feel that you are part of source, of oneness, right? So that is the distinction, but like, and after going into that, like really, well, okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that like, well, I'm really setting it up, right? So like, sorry, I'm just kind of riffing this entry as usual, so like I'm just kind of gathering my thoughts, but what I mean by too much love is a bad thing is not me saying, obviously, right, which is why I'm like, what the fuck, Bo, right, at the very beginning of the century. It doesn't mean don't go for what you love, but don't do it too much, right? Well, the thing is, obviously, that's true, right? Like, in the sense that, like, like life is multidimensional, not only in terms of like how you view it, but also in terms of like there are many areas in life. There are many kind of paradigms that you need that exist out there, right? It's not just do what you love, right? It's also make money. It's also protect yourself, against bullshit. It's also, like expand your mind, expand your horizons, right? It's a great number of things. It is also like connect with people, right? It is also, connect with people and to help people, but also to delve into yourself, right? So life, as I'm sure you know or are discovering, like, is multi-dimensional and multifaceted, right? And you need to be flexible in that regard. And and there are many ways to do that, right? You learn to be flexible, right? And the more flexible you can be with like how you adapt, this is really what people mean, or rather, this is a deeper kind of connotation to when people say be flexible, right? It is to welcome differing things, differing paradigms that arise in your life, and knowing how to deal with certain situations that require certain paradigms effectively, right? And of course, like, as we kind of go further on our journey, we know that, or rather, we realize that, like, like that we actually have a degree of control over this, right? And really, like, and another one of my messages, really, like, or rather, one thing I would like to say, and also one thing I've been going through, that has been kind of very central in my consciousness recently, is like really honing in, and I mean really honing in. I've talked about this before. Honing into or onto what you really love and what will really help you and benefit you in a more kind of logistical, pragmatic sense, right? Health even, and the rest that you discover that isn't aligned with either of those two things, you slowly weed them out of your life because they don't serve you, right? So, and that's, like I said, something I'm discovering with myself more and more, right? And yeah, and it's something that I really am trying to espouse as much as possible in my own life. But and obviously that's fine. That's my message. That's not changing, is basically what I'm trying to say. However, again, and as I explained, there are many different parts of life, right? And as such, we all need to embrace that balance, right? Which means that, like, there is a point where love becomes excessive, right? And what I mean by this is really that, like, I don't know, like, I'm tempted to say it, like, to kind of state it as if, like, like, it's like a thing that I don't do myself, right? Or like I have down pat myself. No, I don't, and it's like I say in a lot of my entries, it's just the way I talk, like, maybe I sound a bit pompous sometimes, but like, but I assure you that, like, I am by no means a master in this. I just have thoughts about it, and I articulate them on these vlogs. But yeah, like, not only is too much, like, kind of, and of course, like, I talked about, or I have talked about in the past, like, how, like, as you kind of go along the journey, not only do you discover more things that you love, but you also realize that love, it's in and of itself, is existing as a feeling, right? It can also, you feel the feeling of love as you do the things that you love, right? And you start to treat the feeling of love as its own entity, right? And that becomes a more effective guidance system for you in the way of seeking out more stuff that you love, right? It's more in all encompassing because it's a feeling, right? And it will lead you to discovering things that you might at one point have shrugged off, or like have been kind of turned off by and not resonated with, and it will open you up. It will make you more open-minded, if you will, or open-hearted, if even, like, to things that you might not have traditionally enjoyed or resonated with, right? And that's why, that's the intro I made. I think it was last week, actually. But yeah, but like the thing is, like, obviously, like I mentioned as well in the entry, like you can't, and I'm sure you know this, like you can't, like, you still have to manage your life, right? You still have to, like, live. You still have to, like, take care of yourself. You still have to make money. You still have to, like, make sure that your flat is tidy, and clean. You still have to make sure that you don't like get you don't you don't get manipulated by people, or used, or things like that, and it's like, obviously it's not a very pleasant thing to talk about, but it's true. It could happen, right? And I'm not saying that if that kind of thing happens that you have to be, like, really callous about it. No, like, it may not happen perfectly when things like, even if you have, like, a very kind of clear strategy with when it comes to dealing with that kind of thing, like, sometimes you still might fall for something like that. You still might get manipulated. You still might get taken advantage of. Like, shit happens, no matter how long you live, right? And of course, we learn to embrace the chaos of life as such, right? Embracing the darkness as well as the light, right? But like, even if things like those like that those happen, right? Like, you can kind of, it's down to you, really. That's the bottom line, is like you build perspectives, right? Which is another thing I talk about on this channel, by kind of, like, trying thought, and like, maybe, like, diving into, like, differing ways of thinking, like, to broaden, like, how you think about things, right? And once you have a lot of those perspectives, you can start to apply them based on, like, what you believe to be the right thing to do in that moment, or the right, so yeah, it's really cool, right, that we get to be so equanimitous, I guess that's the word for it, like, when dealing with, or like, I guess, proficient, in dealing with differing circumstances, or changing circumstances, and different decisions and paradigms, stuff like that. Anyway, but, like, I guess I'm kind of, like, yeah, kind of very like deviating a lot from, like, the topic of this entry, but like, love, too much love, because it happens, right? We just, like, we're like, well, I'm championing love. I know that there are a lot of people, conscious or subconscious, who champion fear, right? I talk about this as well. Like, a lot of it's subconscious. People don't realize that they have a choice between those two things, but, like, and they both exist. They do both exist, right? So, like, you can't just focus on one and not the other, right? But a lot of people, like, subconsciously kind of get into this fearful state most of the time, and they don't realize it. They're still championing fear, but they don't realize it, right? And for those of us who are trying to be more conscious, the key word being try, right? We try to kind of, keep on top of what we focus on, right? We realize that, like, well, particularly if you're a light worker type, you're like, and it just so happens that, like, your kind of most powerful modality is healing, right? You make the decision to, like, be like, I'm going to champion love, right? But as we say that, as we make that decision, like, we also know, right, that love and fear both exist, like I said, right? They both exist. And yeah, like, and like I say, it's about dealing with them effectively. I feel like I'm jumping the gun here a bit. Like, again, I was hoping this would be a bit more inspiring, but, like, I guess I'm in a kind of a logical state today. But anyway, but like, in our kind of championing of love, it can kind of sometimes we can kind of be a bit afraid to put love down because we're fearful of what could happen if we. It's like, because most of us have the sentiment, like, I feel this, so I have my guess is that you feel this too, is that, like, you know that fear and negativity and all of that exists. You know that sometimes you have to kind of be a bit tough, right? At least if you've gotten to that stage, right? At least when you get to a stage where, like, you realize that you have to take responsibility for your own life. If you haven't gotten there yet, then it's a matter of time. It is, like, I know this from my own experience, right? It's only a matter of time, because I used to be someone who could not take it. Like, I thought I could, right? Obviously, everyone has, like, no one has necessarily, like, a super, like, disempowering view on themselves, right? Everyone likes to think that they try their best. That's just, I think that's natural. I think that's normal. But you will get there. I used to be someone like that, but, like, I eventually realized that, like, I have to take responsibility for my own happiness, right? And in so doing, I realized that, like, my happiness can then impact other people, but and whatever I interact with, but, like, but even, like, when you kind of start to own the fact that, like, you have to be a bit assertive at times, right? You have to learn how to be assertive. Like, still, it's like you're like, but it's the absolute last resort, right? Yeah, of course, like, we all have bad days. We all, like, get a bit angry. Like, I got angry at my laptop earlier because, like, it's not very good, um, right? Or, like, angry at someone, but, like, and that's something else, right? But, like, generally speaking, like, you kind of think, like, that you pull out the big guns when it's absolutely necessary, right? Because that, like, negativity in too many doses is so destructive and disruptive. Like, and you're a champion of love, right? So you're kind of vigilant about that. You're like, I know that I have to kind of get assertive at times and to, like, block and to protect myself against negativity by employing a bit of negativity to, like, to get myself out of there, right? And to stop people from, like, leeching off of me or taking advantage of me, right? But at the same time, you're like, I'm a champion of love, right? So, like, I don't want to, like, let myself get too far into the fear-based thinking, right? Because then I'll lose my way, and that's what we all feel as light workers, as healers, as conscious beings, right? However, that can sometimes cause us to have the opposite thing happen to us, where, like, again, we all consciously know that, like, the love and fear both exist. Call it whatever you want. The duality between, like, positivity and negativity, like, and light and dark, right? Love and fear and hate, suffering and joy, peace and chaos or war. We all know this, that there's a duality between good and bad, right? Or light and dark, right? Light and shadow. but like the vigilance that we have towards the darker side of life can sometimes cause us to kind of become a bit too enamored with love, right? And I can say that enamored as a word is probably distinct enough from love to have its own useful meaning, which is like being a bit too attached to love, right? And that can show up, unfortunately, in some not so pleasant ways, right? One, it kind of causes you to become a victim, right? And I will be the first to say that, like, I have played a victim most of my life, and I continue to play a victim. Like, when just sometimes it happens, right? Like, I get a bit tired, or like I feel like my own control over my life is starting to slip a bit. Like, I start to feel like a victim again, and I start to blame everything around me, and just generally get depressed and negative, right? It happens. And this can be a side effect of kind of pining for love a bit too much, right? Because when you tap into your love and you champion love from a healthy space, or from a more balanced space, from a more flowing state, right? It makes you feel, it empowers you, right? And you can tell, because like it doesn't make you feel like a victim. It doesn't weaken you, It if anything, like it just, yeah, it's just in balance. It's in alignment, it's in flow, right? But when you start to pine over love too much, you kind of you kind of and you start to kind of like resist. This is how you know it's happening. Like, you resist negativity, you resist fear, and then thoughts of that nature, right? The minute that you start to think it for yourself, or someone else mentions it, and you get a bit like anxious and upset over it, it means that you're probably, kind of like in a state you're starting to enter imbalance, right? Because really, it's all about flow. It's all about being in this kind of state where life is happening, and you don't necessarily have to force it to go in any one direction, and it's just happening. But you're also aware and conscious of the fact that you're a champion of love, right? That's when life is at its best, right? But sometimes it happens. Again, like, disclaimer, I always give in these entries, like, I don't mean this as a judgment. I myself am just saying this, all of this stuff, to kind of point things out. And then whatever you choose to do with it, whatever I choose to do with what I come up with, is down to us, right? And I feel that's a good attitude to have, because I hope you feel this, what I'm feeling. I'm feeling empowered by having this kind of like a loose and free kind of an interpretation of things, right? Like, there are things that we all want to say, which is why I'm making this entry. Like, things we want to point out for the sake of consciousness, for the sake of, like, we're talking about it, so that we understand the problems in our lives, the potential solutions, and that we continue to grow in a positive way, right? So we say these things, but when we say them, you know, I think, you know, like we all can gain a lot from having the understanding that it's all in the name of consciousness. That if it makes us feel bad, well, then that's something we can be with, right? That's definitely something we can be with. Like we can kind of, it's an opportunity, right? And this basically ties into, you know, I feel like the century is already too long. So like, I feel that like, I mean, I could give a great many examples of how like love can be too much. And it might be worth it just to list a few of these so that like you might be able to see them in your own life. But like, it's just like things stagnate. You know, when you stop making progress, and you know you could be making progress. You know you could be doing more towards your healing craft, more towards your healing business, right? Your contribution, you know, and your own journey to mastering the art of healing in whatever form you choose to do it in, you know. And it's like you start to see the insidiousness of people who are too, I guess, comfortable is a good way of putting it, actually. You know, comfort is a direct result of people who are kind of like, who have fallen. I wouldn't say that it's a conscious choice on their part, right? In the same way that I talk about things like crabs in a bucket mentality, you know, it's like when yeah, that's one thing, but like the one I was going for actually was frog in the boiling water phenomenon, right? When like, you know, when we kind of like slowly but surely lose our way and like get back into the rut that we used to be in because we're complacent and we rest on our laurels, right? But like, that isn't like anyone's fault. And I hope you feel the same way that I feel in understanding and accepting that what we're aiming for is not an energy of judgment. I've talked about this and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about right now. I'm sure I know what I'm referring to. Is whatever, the thing is, like, you can give someone well-meaning advice, really, or someone could give well-meaning advice to you. But that is only as effective as advice as the intention or as the energy that person is bringing. I'm sure you know this. Like, it's like, you know, because I understand it. So, and anyone watching this, I'm sure you understand it. Like, is the energy that is behind that piece of advice. There's more than most people realize. Right? Sometimes it goes over our heads because we're human, I guess, right? You know, sometimes shit happens, right? And we kind of we're not as sensitive to that kind of thing. But like, it's hard. Or I say it's hard. It's like, it takes a bit of finagling to get it right. Or to be, it takes, you know, a kind of like a step back sometimes to kind of like really think about what's going on, you know. But like, what are you broadcasting energetically? What kind of energy are you putting out into the world, right? And judgment versus like the energy of encouragement, the energy of love, I guess. And this is a different kind of love than the love I'm talking about. There are different love. To me, I just thought about this, right? But love is more like a continuum of states. You could think of it as temperature, right? You wouldn't say, it's like each degree, I guess, Celsius if you're from here, or Fahrenheit if you're from America, or anywhere else that uses the Fahrenheit system over the Celsius system, you know, has a different effect. And it's subtle. And love, I feel, is the same way. Really, all emotion is like this, but like, there are some useful kind of quantized positions that we can use to point to that kind of thing. But like, love that I'm talking about right now is more to do with, it's probably the one that I want to champion. I'm sure the one that you feel that, like, when you're going about your thing. This is the kind of love that we're trying to champion, right? And even then, it's like it's useful sometimes, and incredibly healing for ourselves and other people, if we occasionally dive into our fearful side, so that we can understand the pain that we all go through, right? And to be with that. But like, this love is about safety. It is about opening your heart. You know, when it's hurt, to open it and to be with it and to kind of be vulnerable, to cry, to lash out, but not in a defensive way, but in a way that broadcasts, that kind of fully encapsulates your pain. Right. This is why I love the journey of the heart, right? And the journey to really become sensitive to your own experience, is that you really start to understand, like, these subtle differences between someone who is lashing out in defense and because of some kind of mental obligation, versus someone who is lashing out because they're in pain. And they are both pretty ugly. You know, when we think about it, like, people who lash out, particularly at us or other people, that's very violent, and it hurts us. It hurts other people when it happens to them. But to be able to tell the difference, as an example to what I'm talking about, between someone who is lashing out to either fulfill some kind of mental kind of agenda, whether that be to, like, manipulate someone else to feel sorry for them, you know. And I'm just listing these as examples, right? I don't mean these as judgments. Or to indeed, sometimes people do it, I know it's scary, but some people do it to humiliate you. You know, sometimes, like, love can be used as a weapon, right? And that's kind of another point I was trying to make. It's like, I say a weapon. Love is a tool, really. And I mean, and this is love in a more physical sense, right? When you actually do something with that love, is the minute that love starts to kind of become more manifest, right, physically, is when you start to put your love into doing something, whether that be a pursuit or whether that be to do something nice for someone or something like that, right? The minute that you crystallize your love into something that is tangible, an act of kindness, just any act really, is the minute it becomes a tool, right? And what do people say about tools? Tools are only as good as the person using them, or more specifically, the intention or the motivation of the person using them. And that motivation or intention could be conscious or it could be subconscious, you know? And as such, like, that's why we're all on this journey, is to learn the nuance, or to be able to detect and to tell the difference between the motivation, between certain motivations that people have that lead them to do things, right? and to focus on the motivation as opposed to the symbolic action or even opinion or seeming value that that person has. Because when you really start to feel your own motivations for doing things, and you understand like the sometimes animalistic, you know, I say animalistic, but I mean like just like things that are seemingly very petty. Like you just might be jealous of someone, you know, you just might be angry at someone, you might just feel disrespected by someone, you might just want to prove someone wrong, or to get revenge on someone. Like these kinds of things, you could just be aroused by someone, you know. You could just want to get on someone's good side because you respect them, but like when you dig into it, it's like you want their you want something that they have to rub off on you. You want what they have, right? It's like, you know, and you discover these things the more that you understand and accept these things, and to try and be with them and let them inform not only like the way that you approach bettering yourself, but also in like your life choices, right? The decisions you make on a day-to-day basis. The more you come to understand where people are really coming from, where you yourself are really coming from, that happens first. Which is why I say it's so important to I say, you know, own yourself. But it goes deeper than that. It's about knowing yourself as fully as possible, as deeply as possible, as possible, as broadly as possible, right? That selfish, seemingly, desire to know yourself will serve you, and it will serve everyone else. Because that's how it happens. That's the order, is that you learn about yourself in the most glorious capacity and in the most deplorable, you know, repugnant capacity. And as you do that, and as you gain more insights and clarity and understanding and compassion over the many sides of yourself, you will start to see in other people, and you'll start to really see where they're coming from. They might argue the toss that like they are that like it's because of this reason that they're angry, but you know, and you don't call them out on it either. It's tempting to do that sometimes, right? And like it's like you feel like, particularly like with people who like are of like similar kind of awareness, right? It's like I feel this sometimes. I get a bit scared, like that I get locked into a showdown with someone. Like who's the more conscious between like me and you? And it's like the thing is, it happens, right? And like that's another side of life that we have to embrace: competitiveness, right? And what would happen if like you came up against someone who knows about the same issue or possibly more, right? Maybe it's an opportunity to learn from each other, right? And to help each other grow. But nonetheless, you start to really understand the nature of motivation and what really motivates people. Which is when you really see, like, you know, when you awaken, as they say in the spiritual community, to the real world, like when you get unplugged from the matrix, and you start to see things in a different light. So, like, you will see that like a lot of society is oblivious to this, you know, and it's not their fault, because like, I mean, in my own life, right, it's like, who gets to fucking sit around and do whatever he pleases for most of the time? Like it's pretty, I'm pretty lucky. I'm lucky in a great many ways, right? I really am, you know, because other people who might have the same capacity as myself for being conscious, like maybe they just don't have the right circumstances to do it in. And I'm lucky enough to kind of be in a position where I can. So, Yeah. I mean, this is obviously something I want to continue to talk about. Like, I kind of deviated from the original topic of the century, but like, but it's all related, right? You know. But I would definitely probably. Oh God, oxymoron there. I will definitely come back to this at some point, or rather, like, it'll, because this is so important, right? Because it is what my journey is about, and I'm sure it's what your journey is about. Hopefully, is yeah, is doing the right thing, I guess. What is the right thing? You'll come to know that for yourself if you go on a journey, right? It seems like a very nebulous thing to say, very very kind of trite and do the right thing, but like you'll discover what the right thing is for yourself, as I am for myself. Anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap this entry up now, but like let me see if there's anything I need to talk about. Yeah, like I hope the message of the entry was clear. Like even if it wasn't, like I got to kind of speak my mind a bit and talk about what I've been thinking about recently. But really, it's just, yeah. I mean, just I guess have a look in your own life, or feel around in your own life and feel for the moments when like. And and this is really is mostly advice. Like obviously, I talk from my own experience. Like I'm someone who is traditionally more laid back and more kind of docile when it comes to living out my life. I'm not super aggressive or go-getter. I would hope. Like I'm more kind of laid back and play it by ear kind of a person, wing it. Like I'm not super aggressive or like that kind of thing. I would say I am ambitious, but like I'm not like super like aggressive about it. I've always been kind of more like laid back and docile. But for someone like myself, it was interesting to look at kind of like how like people like it's like particularly when you interact with people like we all have like we all want to kind of we all want to kind of fit in and like feel good together and like and cater for everyone's in like kind of comfort and stuff like that, but like the thing is that we have to recognize when it's starting to hurt people. And the thing is, like, I'm not really an advocate of like kind of forcing people to grow. I know a lot of people do this, and what they do is kind of amazing, if not slightly kind of intimidating for someone like myself. There's a lot of people who are like change makers out there, and like they like kind of challenge people, and they're like, "Are you fucking upset about your life? You should be, because you're not doing what you really are destined to do," and that kind of thing. Those people are great because like they kind of shake people out of it, and a lot of people like myself sometimes need to be shaken out of things. They need, we all, some of us need like again, oxymorons today. We all need a bit of a kick up the backside sometimes to kind of get us out of ruts and like to get us moving towards what we really care about. But like, I'm not a strong kind of advocate of that style of doing things, or rather that like that's not really kind of my own style of doing things. But I can be a bit pushy sometimes. But like, generally speaking, I'm more kind of like I try to inspire people to kind of figure it out themselves. But regardless, like I myself could see in my own life where kind of like. I mean, this is the funny thing is like you would think that, like that love is harder. That's the kind of sentiment that I have. Is like love is harder to maintain because shit could always go wrong. I don't know. Chalk it up to like a negative outlook. Like in the earlier stages of my life, I don't know, but like, yeah, like it's like you kind of like you feel like, you know, you need to kind of always champion it, but like, otherwise it'll go away. But the thing is, like, you come to realize that, like, there's a lot of cool stuff in your life that you take for granted. Or at least that was what I realized, is like, you know, I live pretty comfortably, like, I can do a lot of stuff. I can sit and play video games if I want to, and it's like, that's awesome. You know? So maybe it's not that hard. If you live in a developed world, like, maybe it's not that hard to live comfortably and to be fairly happy and content with your life. And maybe that's where most people are, actually. It's just that, like, I don't know, like, it's just like, you know, like, obviously, like, the news talks about, and I say the news, it's just an example, but, like, you know, like, the best things to do for people who are comfortable is probably to kind of, like, sensationalize things and, like, talk about shitty things that are happening, because that's just kind of like I guess the counterpart, in the same way that police are the perfect counterparts to criminals, you know, and they both create each other, like, kind of a thing. Conspiracies. Like, I guess, like, the average person in society who has comfort, and they do have comfort, but they don't necessarily have self-ownership, you know, like, needs kind of shit to happen to kind of feel like that their lives are special. I don't know. Not that their lives are special, but, like, that they need that thing to kind of be like, oh yeah, you heard about that news kind of thing, like that kind of hyped. Because you get that on your own journey. If you're going on your own journey, like, the trials and tribulations of, like, trying to do shit and then, like, slacking off, and like I do a lot, you know, and that kind of thing, you know, and then, like, having to push through, like, a block and, like, and discovering stuff and improving. It's like that shit is the way that you get hyped, right? But, like, for the average person who's just, like, going through the motions, like, they're comfortable, they really are, you know. And it took me this long to realize that I'm pretty fucking comfortable living where I do. Like I say, like, I don't live in a particularly nice neighborhood, you know, and still, like, I live pretty comfortably, you know. I can do whatever I want most of the time when I feel like it, you know. It's pretty fucking cool. But, like, the thing is that, like, there's another side of you that says you should do something useful with that time, though. Sure, like, it's important to, like, be comfortable and to, like, you know, and to have a good and to enjoy yourself, so that you can, like I mentioned in that intro, I talked about, like, how there's, you know, there's a time to fight and to kind of be, like, more sensible, right? That was the entry. Like, I had a bunch of topics in the entry, but, like, there's time to be sensible and there's time to be sensitive to how you feel, right? And really, I mean, the slam dunk of the entry, maybe it's a bit of an anticlimax, is, like, balance. You know, make sure that you make time to like, really enjoy yourself, because that is super important, right? To enjoy yourself, you know, and to open yourself up to how you feel, because, like, being numb sucks, and, like, a lot of us, you know, I get there, I go there sometimes. I used to go there a lot more, but nowadays, like, I try to be more kind of, like, in touch with my feelings. So I try to do more. I try to make decisions when it comes to recreation based on, like, what I really want to do. But sometimes I get numb, and that sucks. And it's like, you don't know what you really want, and you don't know what you're doing, but you feel numb, and it's, like, terrible, that feeling. You know, it sucks. It's not terrible. It just sucks. You know, it's just a downer. Like, when you feel numb, you're not really sure what you're doing. You know. But, you know, but when you really kind of, like, even when you do something that's not quote unquote healthy, like I say, right, you know, if you eat KFC, or you have a donut, or you play video games, or you have a drink at the bar, you know, it's okay, as long as, like, you know you're going to enjoy it. And if you know you're going to enjoy it, then, like, get out of your own way, right? I'm talking to myself more than anything, like, and stop thinking too much about, oh, like, this is going to make me feel terrible afterwards. Like, just, if, you know, just whatever, right? You know, like, yeah. And this is, you know, obviously going into the other side of things, like, you know, enjoy yourself, have a good time, right? But do your work. Be productive. You know, answer to that niggling feeling within you that says you know, I'm going to, you know, I haven't done any work. I'm wasting my time, because that voice is legitimate too. Obviously, like for someone who's laid back, right? It's the voice that's harder to kind of side with, but but that voice does exist. It's like you haven't done any work today, you know, and guess what? That voice goes away when you do work, right? So, and you feel good, and it's like a peaceful feeling, right? When you actually sit down and do your art, or like you work on your business, or you work on your craft, or like whatever it might be, and you do something. Like, or you know, you set up your social media, which I kind of need to do, or you know, you do your market research or whatever it might be. Like, you feel cool, you just feel like relaxed and at peace because you finally did that thing, and that voice goes away. That voice of like, you haven't done your work yet, you haven't done your work yet, you wasted your time. You know, that anxiety of not having done any work, like, it goes away. And that's really it, you know, to be honest. Obviously, you feel cool when you make cool stuff as well, right? That's the feeling that we all want to have, right? But anyway, bit of a casual end to this entry. But then again, maybe this is better, honestly, because I get to be honest in these entries. And yeah, and it feels more like I'm talking to whoever's watching this, and that it's like a real vlog entry, as opposed to me making these videos and trying to like. It started off a bit more logical, but like became a bit more casual towards the end. But anyway, so cool. I hope this entry, long ass entry as usual, was helpful. Yeah, don't really have anything special to say at this point, but like, yeah, you know, just keep going on what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Even if you're not doing the right thing, right? If you're watching this video, and if you even feel shitty about yourself to any degree, it means that you'll figure it out. You know, you'll figure it out. Just watch out for comfort and people telling you to like go and hang out with them. You know, I mean, I'm saying it kind of jokingly, but like, I guess it's kind of serious. You know, like if you deal with things in your life that don't really serve you, then you know, maybe it's time to think about moving on from those things. And like, that sounds harsh, and like, because believe me, I know, right? You know, back when like my life was not anything near what it is now, like, and people would say like, are your friends really blah blah blah, or like, you know, are you really enjoying your job or your relationship? And it's like, and you kind of like, you've never had a choice. Like, it sucks. You know, it sucks to hear that. But like, if you even feel that anxiety from hearing me say that, then you'll be fine. Just take it a step at a time. You know, just have a think for yourself. Take as much time as you need. God knows I took like so much time in my journey to like really sit down with myself and think. You know, people have made the argument to me in the past that like, people who think too much and open Pandora's box are destined to kind of like, they say that ignorance is bliss, right? I made an entry about that. Yeah, like, ignorance is bliss. That was the one I talked about. I think it was championing love, like an extension to that. But like, yeah, maybe I'll put it in the end card. But yeah, you know. But I would make the argument that a lot of people, the majority of people, don't think enough. They don't, you know. A lot of people don't they don't think enough. You know, again, it's just an opinion, but like, obviously, me being in my position, and hopefully you being in your position, like, you think differently to that. But you know, not to say that kind of sentiment is wrong. It's just some people don't think enough, right? I think there needs to be a balance, right? But anyway, cool guys. I hope that was helpful as usual. Like, keep going. You know, I'm there with you. We can do it. Just keep going. It's awesome. Just so let's keep going. So cool. Until next time, guys. I hope you're having a good one. And I'll catch you in the next, hopefully insightful, hopefully entertaining, hopefully real. I mean, because I can be a bit shady at times. But yeah, like wearing a social mask and everything. But I think I'm more real than, you know, than I usually am in these entries. So anyway, yeah, so yeah, catch you guys next time. Peace out. Have a good one. I love you guys. Peace out. Bye. Hiya.